Hello, for real, and welcome to another episode of Tolkien with Friends. Today we are so excited to welcome for the first time to the podcast one of our fellow ladies from Tolkien Talk, Haley.
Hello. Hello, guys. Hello, friends.
We're so excited to have you. And since this is your first time on the podcast, we wanted to hear from you about, how Tolkien came into your life, and especially, what your history is with The Hobbit, the book, and Peter Jackson's trilogies.
Yeah, I think from growing up, it really started with just my parents having a love for stories and big stories and big fantasies, and getting me and my little sister really into that. And so I think it was a no-brainer for them that when we could first start really understanding big stories, that yep, they were Hobbit parents, they were Tolkien parents, they had Tolkien parents, and so it was just naturally we were going to be Tolkien children. And so, and it really, I think, looking back on how it was integrated into my life through just readings. But we have this great property that my whole family owns, and it's a lot of land. But when I grew up, and a lot of kids would go off to Hawaii or Paris or great New York and things like that, we were going up to this dinky little cabin in the woods with a lot of land and no cell service, no Wi-Fi, so it wasn't glamorous. But when we'd read these stories together as a family, because that's what we would do, you could feel it. We were up in the mountains, up in the trees. There weren't any trails or anything. And so as we were reading these stories, and we could go out in the day, and you would really pretend like you were just a little hobbit, like in these big mountains in the woods. There is this road, and we would hide down under it like the four hobbits would in the Fellowship too, and pretend that we were being hunted by Nazgul, which
That's
um,
amazing.
it just brought the stories to life, and it just felt like somewhere in the world, and I don't mean to sound cheesy, but somewhere in the world there is this little bit of Tolkien magic. There's just places that are untouched and naturally beautiful, and the world is beautiful. And I think in my daily life, I love the little messages that he talks about, just small folks doing good things every single day. I mean, we're not all going to have the chance to go fight Balrogs and go on great adventures and things like that, but there's a lot that is not just applicable then when the book was written, but it's very much applicable now. I mean, I think back on the contract that Bilbo has, and I'm like, I bet you could go back through there, and Thorne might be liable for negligence and not talking about it. But just the way it is so prevalent in everything we kind of do daily. My journey with The Hobbit itself, specifically, it is such a children's book. So I think when I think back on where it started was just I loved it as a children's book. It was this dragon and the dwarves, and not to Disneyfy it. And I know Tolkien took his dwarves very seriously, and looking back on the movie, maybe that's something that is a little bit of a, when you rewatch it back, you're like, they are kind of jovial and almost laughing, and they, silly Disneyfied dwarves. They're not the serious. They've been through, as a species, they've been through, or race actually, I guess, they've been through a lot. Like, they are in serious, heartbroken, weathered dwarves that they've lost their homes. They've been through a lot. And so looking back on it now and watching it again, it's not just the fairy tale look that I think as a child you just really you run with it. And so I'm really excited to like actually do the side by side comparisons. And I've never looked at it from the book to the movies, to the book to the movies, and that has been a real eye opener into the movie world of Tolkien, the book world of Tolkien. And I guess personally, I give a lot of grace to movie Tolkien. There's a lot. It's so much, and they walk a lot. They do a lot of walking.
Yeah.
You're not gonna show a whole movie of just them walking, even though they kind of do. But
Yeah.
looking at kind of where the movie goes, and I think it's a lot about exaggerating some of the stuff in the book, and I'm more okay if it's in the vein of Tolkien and you can explain it as Tolkien. I don't. Sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you make a dwarf fall in love with an elf. But
It happens. It happens
you
sometimes. You just whoops,
know,
whoops. How did this? How are these two?
where'd that come from? You know, it's
Yeah.
explicitly said that they're gonna have fighting forever by literal God, but yeah, it's I'm excited. The Hobbit's great. I love it. It's been a big part of my life, just as fantasy, but also just in therapy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Hobbit book is like a comfort item. You
Oh,
know what I mean? Like you reach for it, you're suddenly like, oh, okay, I can chill because it isn't the epic tale that like say Lord of the Rings is. You know, like there is danger, there is adventure. You know, there are stakes, but there overall, I mean, this is like the book is really about like Bilbo and him finding himself and his own courage rather than, you know, trying to ultimately like save Middle Earth as we know it. And you know, obviously his adventure plays a role in it, of course, but as far as like the framing goes, it's very different. And then obviously once we
yeah.
get to the movies, we're kind of dealing with this situation where we're struggling with the tone. Like we're here and then we're there, and then you know we can't quite decide where we land. So with all that being said, today we are going to officially start the extended edition of Peter Jackson's third installment in his Hobbit trilogy, The Battle of the Five Armies, maybe one of the most controversial of both trilogies, and covering the chapter Fire and Water. So, this part of the movie and chapter picks up where inside information leaves off. And if you know, you remember this is when Smaug he's peacing out of the Lonely Mountain and he's headed straight for Esgaroth or Lake Town. And the movie really leans into the fact that the movie, like the audience, knows that Smaug has left. Where and you know we're all fully aware that the dragon's on the way. While in the book, it's very much like we've left the dwarves and we're kind of like checking in, how's Lake Town doing, and they are
Okay,
kind
one
of
thing.
yeah, they're like not in the know about what is going on with Smog. And I thought that was an interesting choice, the way that the movie starts and you're almost immediately like plunged into chaos of Lake Town being attacked. I mean, they do have this mini build, I would say, with like you see Smog's shadow swooping over, and I'm kind of like, why would he do that? Why would he swoop over and not immediately set everything on fire? But they do get to that. They do get to that pretty quickly.
Yeah, he gets to it pretty quick, I was gonna say.
Like 5 seconds where he's like, "Woo!" And then we get into chaos and destruction. But in the chapter, we kind of open with relative calm. You know, we kind of get a little explanation about the people of Lake Town and how they don't like looking at the peak of Erebor. They can see it. That's about all that they can get because of the hills. And they don't like looking at it, but they definitely see it today because it kind of flickers into view. And you know, as the reader, we know that this is probably Smaug's attack on the secret door when he's you know real pissed, real mad, Smaug. And you know, at first the people of Lake Town are like, "Woohoo!" Like Thorn and company are doing the thing. That you know, they're probably uh forging golds.
Rivers of gold.
Yeah, and then this is where and then we see it, you know, Tolkien kind of just introduces that a grim voice answers that it is like is not the marauding fire of the dragon, is the only king under the mountain we have ever known. And this is how we are introduced to Bard. We have not seen Bard at all in the book until this chapter, which is interesting. Obviously, the movie we met him way early. They folded him into the story of how they get into Lake Town, which I think makes sense to expand upon Bard, because otherwise the only other really named characters we know from Lake Town, and we knew we were going to meet Bard eventually. I think it makes sense to have him more of a part in the movie, because I don't just want to be thinking about Lake Town people as the master or this Alfred character they've come up with. Like,
Yeah.
possibly the two nastiest characters Peter Jackson has ever made.
The unibrow.
It's too much. It's like literally eating balls of something. Like, they look like these two guys probably
just
stink.
as bad as the Goblin King. It was nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some nasty characters in The Hobbit. No. Um, but one thing that is we see it kind of a different through this. We see kind of like two different presentations of Bard. Not always too dissimilar, but you know, in the movie, he is like Bard, like the barge man. Like, he gets things from one place to another with the river and the long lake. But in the book, he is a bowman. He is the captain of the archers of Lake Town. And now in the movies, we've already learned that he's descended from Girion, Lord of Dale, which is the human settlement near the Lonely Mountain before, you know, Smaug ate everybody. But that's not something that we learn until this chapter, kind of just as like a, you know, Tolkien will just slip in some history every once in a while. So that's a slight difference, but like in changing his profession, he's also, you know, they've also kind of made him at odds with the master, which is more of a subtle undertone, like plot line in the book, whereas, you know, they're outright like, you're doing this wrong. And I don't think anything that they've done with Bard as like how he acts, I don't think any of that, while it's like different, they presented him with like slightly different situations, but I still think that the way Luke Evans and like the writing that they've done for movie Bard is still pretty on par with how I think Bard probably would have reacted to those various scenarios. You know, like if that was Bard, he still feels like Bard, even though he's got a different job and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they really took the grim-faced, grim man, which is really all they say it how many times?
Yeah, he grim.
Grim.
Just Debbie Downer, and they gave him a family, which I do agree. I like how, and they really hinted. I even think Ballin was like, "You have a family." They really started to build him up as this, which makes the scene of his son coming up later, which we'll get to, I'm sure, but it makes his whole family connection and the reunion just that much more. You feel it, and I liked this part of the movie magic, I guess they were going for, rather than just I'm the book was great at explaining Bard's, like you said, the captain. He's stoic. He's for the people. He will never, leave them. He is this descendant of this great man. And I like how they took that, and they did add, I thought, a good part. And they gave him, he almost felt like the Sound of Music dad. I forget his name right now, but
Yeah.
that's what he reminded me of almost. Just that very stoic, but also very loving. Yeah, it was an interesting addition to make him more human, which I love. This chapter was a win for the men, which I don't know, in Tolkien, it's hard to find that, like a solid man battle, which in the books there wasn't anybody else. There wasn't elves, no dwarves. It was just a real single, and even I'm looking at other times when you think of big men fights like Helm's Deep, but they had elves and stuff, and there was help. So this was a true just win for the men of Middle Earth.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because when we think of like Lake Town or Esgaroth, like this settlement is kind of descended from. I mean, I think these are like true middlemen, which is something that we've talked about in our first season with Lord of the Rings, which, you know, the Rohirrim are that as well, but I feel like we have such an association with Theoden and like his nobility. There's no king here. They have an elected official in charge who is definitely worse in the movie, like 100%. Like the whole like trying to get away with all this gold,
Yeah.
like that
There's
is
no
an
peace in the
addition.
books either, but he's much worse in the movies, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So he,
Yeah.
it's like this situation where it's a town of regular guys and regular people, and what they do in the face of something that has hurt their ancestors, and it's the exact same dragon that they fled from before, and that some have even forgot about. And what do they do in that situation, which I think is really fascinating. It's something I really want to get into. But I also want to talk about, like, of course, we mentioned his kids, and also Bard in the movies is unable. I think he would have given the chance, but obviously his role is different. He's also imprisoned, which sucks. He's been arrested for no reason because the master in the movies is so much worse than I think the master in the book, he is selfish, but he's very much a politician. Like, he wants to be on the right side of, like, the votes. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't really do anything to, like, get people up in arms per se. Well, we may say something about that a little bit later, but as far as Bard's concerned, they didn't really have, like, this intense animosity between each other. But um, Bard in the books is able to sound the alarm about Smaug because of not only, like, his disposition, but he was in a position to do so. Like, and people listened because he is the captain of these archers. Whereas in the movie, he's locked up. He's, like, desperately trying to escape. I think his escape was a little goofy. That was a little much.
He choked
Oh,
out the
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 master.
guy so hard. I was like, what in the
Yeah, like the way that he, like, hooked onto the master. Like, I know that was supposed to be like an accident, but, like, he hooks onto him and then he's like he's like, I'm like, I think he would have died like if that was for real. Like, that was
Yeah,
like
when I watched
very
that scene, I was
cartoony.
like,
I was like, I don't remember this at all. I was like, this is insane. Like, I was just kind of cackling because it was so, like, out of
dramatic?
left field. Yeah, I was like, what is this cartoon that I'm watching? But he gets out, and he's pretty much the only one in the movie that is trying to fight Smaug. Everyone else is, like, evacuating, which I don't blame them at all. But with that, I like how, so he is able to kind of rally the troops in the book. He's got people fighting against Smog, which I think is awesome. And so I want to take a second to, like, talk about the defenses of Lake Town, because this is something that, like, before yesterday, really, it was something that I was just kind of accepted about how, like, Lake Town was built and all of that. And it wasn't until, like, recently that I was like, oh, like, this really, even if partially unintentionally, this really had, like, a strategic advantage for them that I hadn't considered. Like, I understood that it probably did, but I didn't really think it through. So we know that in both, it is built on a lake, like platforms surrounded by water with a bridge leading to land. Makes sense. And what also we learn in the book is that when Bard is, when they realize that Smog is coming, and it's not some, like, crazy forge situation up at the Lonely Mountain, that every vessel in the town was filled with water, every warrior was armed, every arrow and dart was ready, and the bridge to the land was thrown down and destroyed before the roar of Smog's terrible approach grew loud. As And then as Smog attacks the town, Bard leading the archers, of course, we see that while some townspeople are evacuating, of course, others are throwing water on every fire that he is, raising, and kind of prolonging or, like, delaying the destruction of Lake Towns, giving the, because of course, like, as this keeps happening, structures are falling down, but they're not just letting it happen. And we also learn, of course, people are shooting at him, but no arrow hindered Smog or hurt him more than a fly from the marshes, which I think we all kind of expected would be true. But the thing that really struck me was the positioning of the town and like the tearing down of the bridge, it's like, okay, so you like made it so you can only escape by boat, but it says that Smaug swept towards the bridge and was foiled, implying that Smaug's original plan was to use the bridge and walk into town just and like breathe fire on it from, I guess that makes sense, so like breathing fire on the platforms and then everything would just burn by like a domino effect.
Oh yeah.
And I was
um
like, you got wings, my man.
I know it
Oh,
just like, as a
You not
dragon with
we know
wings.
you can shoot fire while you're flying. It's not like you need to be on your feet to shoot your fire. Like,
Yeah, he can do it from wherever, and it's just interesting that that was Plan A. Plan A is to just waltz in, and does that not give Glaurung vibes?
but I think
Uh,
it was so
flying on the bridge. Yeah.
strategic.
yeah,
I think it was so important that that bridge went out for a couple reasons because, of course, I think with Smog knowing that the only spot that they could hit was under his belly, and
but I
nobody
don't think, but
knew.
he doesn't know that he's unprotected, which is interesting.
That's
Smog
true. He kind of
Smog
rolled
thinks that
over.
he's Gucci. He doesn't know that he has this hole in his on his chest, and
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but if obviously, I guess it's just not ideal. If he was to have a soft part, I think he does know that it would be like here, but he's very confident that nobody can touch him, and he's not wrong because it's not working.
mhm,
And but if he had walked in like that, there would be no opportunity to shoot him in the chest, like we know what happens. And there would also be no opportunity for somebody to point out that there was a hole there, which is what the thrush does in the
yeah.
book. But in the movie, they really are just like, the audience can see that there's a hole there. Like we've all noticed it. So Bard obviously notices it as well. There's not like the thrush from previously, who is like kind of the signal that the secret door was going to open, or like the keyhole would appear. And so I just think that's so interesting that like, if they hadn't taken the bridge out, like, and obviously Smog knows that if, what I also think is an interesting like mechanic of dragons is that if he was, I don't even know why he would enter the water if he can fly, but there was an implication that if he swam up to the city, that he would, like, there would be
Lose
this.
his belly fire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would
Yeah.
get quenched, which I think it's like fire and water. This chapter is so interesting. And back to what you were saying in their preparation, they're making the roofs all wet. They're filling everything with water. They're making it so he has to fly around, which I think is like less desirable, I guess, for him. And it's interesting how the book goes well into his mind. Like you get how smart this dragon is, and really a testament to Bilbo when he's talking to him about how he can really riddle with this guy, and the dragon is just mind boggled by this little hobbit. But I think you really get to hear him. He's like he wants to have fun. He even mentions like I'm having kind of fun, and he's
Yeah, that is one thing I kind of wish that they had given Smog. Like, I know we get to hear
yeah.
him a little bit talking to Bard, like taunting him, which I think is on point, but also like because he is the only person fighting him, he's like rude. But I do think it would have been interesting to throw him a line about how he's literally having a fabulous time. Like this is the most fun he's had since probably the last time he destroyed a town, which was like 60 years ago or so.
His plan was evil. I mean, he was going to flush everybody out and then burn all the boats and then burn the whole surrounding. He was really going to go after these.
Yeah, he was like, I don't care if these people escape this part, and then I get to,
Even better.
yeah, then I get to
Pick 'em
chase him
off.
around. I'm Smog for you.
That dragon.
The best of the worst.
That dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think it's funny that like, if they hadn't, I mean, I don't know, Tolkien doesn't describe what it takes to take down their bridge, because I don't think it was like a suspension bridge or anything, but they obviously had like a way to just like
Cut it.
cut it loose or like get it away, sink
Too
it
quickly,
somehow.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it is interesting to think about how if Bard hadn't said anything or hadn't noticed or whatever, maybe he was like taking a bath at that time, you know what I mean? Then like they wouldn't have been able to take those few minutes to do all of those things. But also I also want to talk about the thrush because I really like the thrush. I really like it. So, if you remember, in the movie, we see the thrush a couple of times. We see it at the end of the first one where Gandalf is like correcting Dory or one of them about like, oh, that's a thrush, and then we see that thrush go later to knock the snails against the side of the mountain to like indicate, when the thrush knocks, like the instructions on the map said, about when the key would appear for that secret doorway. And the other part that the thrush plays, I mean, that's pretty much the end of his time in the movie, but the other part that the thrush plays is that some of the men of Dale used to be able to understand the thrushes, and use them as messengers. And so this thrush, obviously he was chilling at the mountain, he saw what was going on, and he heads over to Bard literally right before he's about to shoot him, and tells him to look for the hollow of the left breast as Smaug flies above him before shooting his last arrow, which is a black arrow. They definitely beef up that arrow in the movie, which I can also kind of logically understand, as far as like he's a big boy, needs a big arrow, you know? But because I don't really know. I mean, it's just described as a black arrow. I think it is forged by the dwarves, um, originally, but it isn't like said to, like, he still uses a regular bow for it. So
Mhm.
it's just, I guess it's just metal in this version.
Okay.
Um, and so the thrush is what tells him, tells him basically how to defeat Smog, because it's pretty tiny hole. Like in the movie, we all kind of know. So like, of course, Bard also knows, like he can see it because we can see it. But I do really like this the including of the thrush, because it's one of those elements of this story that adds like a bit of whimsy that I think really gives the Hobbit its own distinct feel in comparison to like the anything else in the Legendarium. So I get why they didn't do it, but I also am like,
Peter Jackson was like, "You shall not have talking animals,"
no
and he did
talking
not.
animals.
They're
And he did not.
expensive. I
Yeah.
kind of got that sense with the dragon, and kind of like you were saying that there was a lot. I felt you could see a lot of fire. There was a lot of smoke. I did. I mean, I appreciated that watching the movie because you really felt what it might have felt like to just be surrounded by a town that was literally just
Mm.
burning and going up. But again, like thinking kind of on the lines of Game of Thrones, and when Dany was in that last in season 8 when she's flying over the town and burning King's Landing, and I'm thinking to the bridge too, and how the dragon could just like, perch on things and just, which maybe was Smog's plan with the bridge, just to kind of sit there
Mhm.
and just take
Yeah.
everything out. But um, yeah, dragons are expensive. I kind of wish we'd seen a little bit more of him though. In that scene, it felt quick, but
Yeah. He does give an epic death. I do like that they kind of they sit with that for a minute, in the movie, like he is in pain and he flies up before you literally see like the life leave him, and like his fires go out, and then he falls, and I think they imply that he also takes out the master when he does that.
yes,
Mhm.
I was like, oh,
yes,
okay, dark. But I also wanted to. I think he did a great job. I like if Benedict Cumberbatch actually did that scream, like bravo. But I do also like how it is described in the the book, and when I was reading it, just Josh, he was like, that should have killed people, like, because it said it deafened men, felled trees, and split
And
stone, and
split stone, yeah.
he's
Like,
like, I mean, obviously, and even in the book, nobody like people are deafened apparently, but Tolkien doesn't really like sit with that, like the ramifications of that, like just people like in the because we do have a moment with the aftermath, where people are very hurt, and everything, but it's like he doesn't. I mean, obviously it's a children's book, but I almost wonder like there is like a horrific kind of moment there, um even though we won, but it's kind of awful at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. I think they even say that ominous line too. That's like the dragon's dead, but they didn't understand what that meant yet. And you're kind of like, well, that's
Hmm.
not great. Like,
I know, like,
and they spend a lot of time talking too about, a lot of them died afterwards because it was just cold and
mhm.
wet and they didn't have food, and that's upsetting.
I
So
know
it's
that
just,
I
ooh.
was I was kind of shocked. Like I didn't really remember that part in the book.
Mhm.
That
Yeah, neither did I.
He said
yeah, like
many of them died too, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like they lived through that, and sorrow was also a cause of death, and
Oh,
it's
that's
just, but at the same time that it's also when people start turning their minds to the gold. um we do have this kind of like celebratory moment where they are praising Bard probably for the first time in a while. In the movie, they give this to Alfred, who is just like trying to distract from him being a shitty person, I guess, and also like I guess trying to jump on the bandwagon of being pro Bard, even though that was never the case in the rest of this movie. So just really leaning into the slime ball character that they've created here. But really it's like everybody is saying that in the movie. Bard didn't like that so much, to be called king, but in the book he's more like, I mean, he doesn't like pro, I mean, he is like from a nobility, in
great
that
line.
he
Yeah.
was, his family were the lords of Dale. um and he, but everyone also is at the same time thinking about the dragon's horde left behind. And at first, the master in the book, he's gone, in the movie, I guess, but in the book, people start thinking about the gold left behind, and the master kind of tries to turn public opinion against Thorin and company. But Bard is also like, they're probably dead, dude. Like, there's no way they got out of that. Like Smaug ate them, and then he came down here because he was still mangy. So that'll be interesting when they see what actually happened. But he's also kind of like, I kind of want some of that. I kind of want to rebuild Dale. If since there's no dragon up there anymore, it's kind of safe now. So that's interesting. So you already see Tolkien like planting some seeds about how people might not be thinking too favorably about the dwarves. That hasn't quite happened yet in the movie. We also do cut back a couple of times to the dwarves that are currently at Erebor,
Yeah.
and they seem to be watching from where we last left them in the chapter. Actually, it's not like a guard room, but it seems to be positioned in a similar location along the mountain. And they're they for sure knew when Smog left. Unlike what we talked about last episode, where they were very much in the dark about what happened to Smog. And so they know that he's attacked the town, and they also know when he dies. And Balin makes a note that people are going to start talking throughout the land about Smog being gone, and they cut to Thorin looking kind of grumpy about that, which I think we'll get into more next time. But they're already planting some various seeds about how people are feeling at this moment,
Mhm.
post Smaug.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought it was interesting in that scene. You have all of the dwarves looking towards Lake Town while Smaug is destroying it and being very concerned. But then you have just Thorin by himself, facing completely away, just staring at the entrance to the mountain. Like he does
Mm,
not care what is going on with the dragon, with the people, with everybody else. Like he's like at this point just singular focused, and that's when we start like Bilbo starts talking about this, the sickness and all that stuff. So we like are starting to see it already.
It,
yeah.
it was interesting in the book too how it was different when the death of Smog happened, how the birds actually played such a big role in it. I'm just thinking how did the thrush know? I mean, whether they saw it, I'm actually wondering if there's more of a relationship between dragons and birds, or maybe rivalry is a better way to put it. And all these birds that I think they mentioned, there's a ton of them sitting outside watching as the dragon flew, and then right as he died, all of them took off, and it was, everyone knew about it. Bayor knew about it. Everyone knew about the dragon died because all the birds had gone off, and the king or Thranduil, I'm sure we'll talk to more when he shows up. He was on his way to the mountain, but it was the birds who talked about the dragon, and I think he diverted back to Lake Town. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yes, that
Yeah.
was something that I also thought was interesting because in the last episode, we were talking to Nick, and that they end the not at home chapter with that there were all these birds flying like, and the dwarves and Bilbo didn't really understand what was going on with that. They're like, what? They're like,
yeah,
they
what?
see it, they think it's strange, but obviously this is around the same time that I think that the birds were carrying these messages throughout, because we do see how that is, people are getting the news. I don't know if that means that birds just like to gossip or what, but
I like to think of birds being great gossips.
yeah.
Absolutely.
That is what
And
they're
then,
doing up there.
but then at the same time, we've already got some, like, so I don't know if these are um like other types of like songbirds or something, because then we have a different association with the crows, because at the same time that Thranduil, he hears about, okay, Smaug's dead, everybody immediately first thought is like, okay, there's a bunch of money in there that nobody has, and I would like some, please. And so he sets out with kind of an army, and so the crows follow Thrandy, being like, "War is a coming," and I'm like,
Yeah.
that, and they're not wrong, but it's not because of that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm like, wow, crows are, and I think we already had a reference from the dwarves earlier in the book being like, crows kind of suck. Ravens, cool. Crows, bummer. So we've got crows following Thranduil, which I don't know what they do when they realize that he diverts to Lake Town, which I also think is cool, and I'm interested to see like how it plays out through the rest of the movie, because when he gets that message from Bard, we don't really see that yet, because in the movie, since it does cut back to kind of the dwarves and the next chapter, but I'm interested to see how Thranduil responds, because in the book he's already gotten messages from Bard and saying we need help.
Hmm.
Like, we have nada, and we have a lot of people that did survive. I think they like three-quarters of people survived or
Yeah.
something, which is good.
Great number.
Huh?
Great number.
Yes, it's more than half. So, and then Threadwell does, he diverts his course to go help these people, and Tolkien mentions, I think at the very end of this chapter, that it's like 11 days after Smaug's death that
Yeah.
they take uh, a week and a half to help to try to get people back on, get shelters, make sure, like, tend the wounded, that kind of thing, um, before they turn their minds back to the treasure situation.
Which is interesting because, and I'm sure, I think they mentioned no one was going to go near the dragon, but no one also went near the dragon, which had all of these gold and stuff. And I'm wondering if it's because it's some sort of blood money type situation, or it's like we're not going to touch the dragon and the sickness and all of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting point that and I don't know if Peter ever cuts to it because it really seems like it'd be right up his alley to show like a rotting Smaug. But when in the book in this chapter, if you haven't read it, he at the very end he makes a point to say that in addition to uh try kind of taking care of their immediate needs, they also start with the elves help, they start planning for the next iteration of Lake Town, which they're going to move further away from. It's obviously going to be on the shore, but it's going to be away from that spot in the lake because you know it, they don't want to be near Smaug's final resting place, uh, and they are able to see his bones or amidst the like ruin of that version of Lake Town. And as we knew from when Bilbo met him, he's been laying in this treasure for so long that bits of gems and gold and things have like become like stuck and like embedded into his scales, um, which doesn't sound comfy at all. But I mean, to
Beauty is
each his
pain.
own. But as he's decomposing, these gems are falling off, but no one would dare to enter the lake to retrieve them, which is, I mean, I
Wasteful.
guess I get it, but kind of surprising that not one. I don't know.
Not
I don't
one
know.
And
curious
also, what does a
water.
decomposing dragon body smell like and look like?
But
And
if you're in the water, can you smell it?
I don't
Could you
know.
get
I
it
don't
in your
know.
mouth?
It'd just be
Oh,
like bits of dragon.
yeah. I
Swimming
guess.
dragon, good soup, right?
I mean, good soup.
Good dragon soup.
I guess at the same time, they probably don't have like snorkel gear. You know?
That's fair.
Hold your breath, deep water dive, hobbits. Let's go.
Yeah. Like who? I don't even know. I don't even know how that would work, but nobody wants to
No,
in any case. So I'm sure it's tempting. I wonder if ever like, I mean, I don't know, like, because like some lakes are big enough to where they kind of have like it's possible maybe one day something would come to shore, but maybe not.
You're telling me coins didn't fall off him as he's flying and didn't leave this just like trail of gold they can go and pick up? I mean, maybe we're getting to the weeds, but there's
Yeah.
gold. There's some gold. Like,
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, well, it's right there, but what? I mean, at the same time, they also at this point think that the dwarfs are dead, so they won't have like
and
any issues getting that gold.
some of the treasures, as well as Tolkien was describing it, he talked somewhat when he was talking about the dragon sitting on. He's like, I would never use any of this, but these are things that everyone finds precious. I mean, family heirlooms. It's almost like when you have art that we've seen that people destroy. That's just very sentimental or very famous, and it's just the value of it sometimes is just so great. There goes my brain. On Sundays,
Yeah.
I totally lost my train of thought. But it just the value of everything inside that mountain. It's just got to be.
Yeah, I do think that it's implied that it might not just be the stuff from Thorin's ancestors, because he did destroy Dale as well. I think it's reasonable to think that he would have taken stuff. I mean, they were governed by a lord, an aristocrat. They aren't without means. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't be surprised if
I
Bard
mean,
does have some kind of claim to
and
what's in there.
they all, I mean, knowing the dwarves and their history too, they made a lot of stuff for a lot of different peoples of Middle Earth. They made swords for, elves and men, great big swords and great gems and everything. So, and the shirt that the mithril that Bilbo got was just sitting in there apparently, which is like, wow.
And that was supposed to be meant for a young elf
Young
Well,
elf prince, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
The tiny baby elf.
Little baby.
So yeah, that's. I mean, we're obviously gearing up for some conflict. Um, maybe some more of like the political or interpersonal kind. Uh, I know that one thing that we've talked about in this is that how these movies kind of don't really let up on the action, and that to me it's been it's been a little bit exhausting sometimes watching them, because it just, where Lord of the Rings would like give you these moments, like it's almost like taking a breath in between. I feel like these movies don't do that a lot, so I'm kind of hoping that since it started off so like chaotic and punchy, that they'll like, I'm pretty sure the next scene is about Thorin being a little cry cry, but I'm hoping that that is a little bit more we're not just like pulling out swords every 2 seconds. I know that there will be lots of swords in this movie. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's called the Battle of the Five Armies, but
Callie's having trouble making eye contact.
yeah, but I don't know. Never mind.
I
One
think
thing
we're just at the beginning of our very wild ride.
I know. It's like the beginning of the end of the.
We are about to go off the rails.
Great, love it.
Go for it.
One of the things that we didn't talk about, we have a very, very brief cut to Gandalf being imprisoned
Just in his
in
birdcage.
his birdcage in Dol Guldur. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, obviously this doesn't happen in the book, and it doesn't happen in the timeline either, which we've talked about in a previous episode. And but it is surprising to me. I'm like, you're telling me that like we've revealed that it's Sauron. Like, as a casual watcher, I'm trying to get into the mindset of somebody who's just watching this. You're telling me that Sauron wouldn't just take Gandalf out in that moment? Like, why is he in a cave? Like, why are you like just having him hang out? Literally,
Duck.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a Sauron move to me, but I don't know if you guys have any other feelings around that.
I think the only thing that stuck out to me in that scene was just they kept hitting the Galadriel Gandalf love theme. Apparently
Yeah.
that was a thing in this Hobbit series. Like
Yeah, they've definitely held hands.
and I was just, why?
Yeah, because Celeborn is not a thing, Haley.
No, never. No, not our boring king.
We forget about the Lord of Lothlorien. Oh, poor guy. But yeah, they've got the telekinesis going on in that quick scene, telling him that he's not alone, which I guess that means that because I do know, like, from my vague memories of this movie, that Saruman and Galadriel, I think even Elrond, show up to help Gandalf. And so, but more I'm down for more Christopher Lee. I'll just put it like that. I love him. So I guess they're like teasing that, and also maybe being like, if you were thinking about what Gandalf was doing, nothing really.
He's still miserable.
But I do think that there is like an over tendency in these movies to like intercut different things. Like, I know that had to happen sometimes in Lord of the Rings. I don't think it's really needed in these movies. Like for example, when it was like the riddles in the dark scene, and we're like cutting between the dwarves a lot. I really wish that stuff like that was like, just sit with it. Just sit with Bilbo and Gollum for a minute. And the same with like Smaug. They were like, and Bilbo, like, that is such a great scene. Like, just let them have their back and forth. But we cut around. We always have to check in on everybody else, and it's like, I just don't think it's as necessary as I think. I think it made a lot of sense in Lord of the Rings, especially the way that book is set up. I don't think it made as much sense.
It did feel like they were trying to give the actors a lot of moments maybe where they
Mhm.
were just yeah, and remember this guy and remember they're over here and not just this was the story part.
Mhm.
And it was more just giving the actors their big moments. And now that I'm thinking about it, in this whole lake town in the movie, there was Tariel. There was like I actually think back to what you were saying in the beginning when you saw this wing flash and she was the one who saw it. And I think it might have been seeing to her elven eyesight that maybe she's the only one that saw the wing go before everyone else did, and that's why she ran back in. But that was really her only help. And I'm like,
Yeah, like she
that's
is
awful.
responsible for evacuating Bart's kids and the dwarves. I mean, that's like the
Yeah.
part that she kind of plays here. And when they all come ashore, and I think it's good that they did have like the aftermath of the destruction, but they use that to kind of get us more Keely Tariel moments, which I don't think anybody was asking
Legolas,
for.
Keely,
Oh man,
Tariel. Love
Yeah, like Keely's like,
come
here,
with me.
take my lucky rock.
penguin. Here we go.
And then
Yeah.
Legolas is just, no.
Leave the dwarf.
Yeah. It was so I literally burst out laughing. I was like, Josh, come look at this, and I rewound it because like, they're trying to have this like Healy Tariel moment, and then she just like stiffens before we even pan to Legolas, and it's one of those scenes where it's like his eyes are like ridiculous looking.
It's like she always knows that he's over her shoulder. Like
And I'm
when
like
she all is always aware that he's there suddenly. It's
and I'm like,
very
the
strange.
last time we saw Legolas, he was chasing orcs out of town, and I'm like, so where were you for the whole Smaug thing? You
Give
know
up.
what I mean? Like Bard was the only one doing anything. I was just kind of like, and then you show up for this. I was just kind of like, come on. Like Legolas in these movies is just like he's not quite right. You know what I mean?
But in the movie, he tells Tariel that they're going to go to Gundabad to get what all the orcs, like the two of them together. Like, what is? That's a pretty poor plan, Legolas. I mean, I wouldn't follow you either, man.
Yeah, he's not himself in these guys. He's not the Legolas I recall. Oh.
No, they really, and what they did with Thranduil too. And I think in the books they were almost every time they described him, they were like, but he's really good. He's a really
Mhm.
good person at heart. Like he diverted from the mountain to help the lake men because he's so good. And in
Mhm.
the movies, they really played up like the dwarf, like Thorin, and even the Thorin and Bilbo. How I really felt like, sorry, just to zoom out
No,
whole
totally.
whole guy, but I felt like the Hobbit, the book, and the Hobbit, the movie, where the movie was more of it was almost a test. Like Bilbo was being tested this whole time to be part of Thorin's company, where in the book it was more of recognizing the inner strength and the inner adventurer within Bilbo, and how it's this how we shouldn't read a book by judge a book by its cover. And it was almost proving Gandalf right the whole time rather than this test of strength, which it definitely was. Don't get me, he was a different hobbit through the quest, but it was more of him having these little moments that he just took charge. Like he went out to the trolls and he just like busted past everyone to go down into the hall of the dragon cave. And they even mentioned the dwarves. They were like, they weren't really, the big fighting guys. They just kind of knew the value of money, and that if they paid Bilbo more, he would do more stuff for them. So it was just interesting, the comparisons between the dwarves and the stories and their relationship with him.
Yeah, I think that that's one thing that is probably the biggest bummer for me is that we don't get a lot of Bilbo in these movies. And I think that Martin Freeman was so perfectly cast, and they just can't. The focus was so all over the place that they didn't really give Bilbo the moments that I think that he deserved. And I was really all for like getting in some more of the White Council stuff and like seeing more Gandalf and even more Thorn, as but like with the addition of all the orc stuff and like really honing in on like really trying to like give so much screen time to every single dwarf. Um they really they do it by taking away from Bilbo, and he doesn't get to have these like moments of leadership the way that he has shown many times throughout, and I feel like he's constantly, every time they do let him do something good, then it's almost like Thorin completely forgot that he was cool the whole time. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he's
Yeah.
like constantly proving himself to Thorin in the movie, where it really wasn't like that. Like he had earned their respect early, and so now it's just kind
Well
of like
before. Like, they were, like, kissing his bo they were, like they promised their lines of children to his service. They were so in love with him. It was like, this guy was really cool. He was actually a really extreme explorer and really showed his worth many times. We get, like you said, well before they even got to the dragon. And I
Mhm.
think it was funny when he was at the dragon. They were like, I don't think they thought this through. Like, no one told me what to do. No one told me what to do after. Back to the whole like contract thing. I'm like, I think that contract might be void because
Oh yeah.
take the whole share, buddy. You
Yeah,
earned it.
yeah, that's one of the things that, and we haven't quite seen this either, but like I know we're gonna get more Arkenstone stuff soon, and we saw a little bit of that last chapter, but it hasn't quite come into play in the movie quite yet. But it is interesting thinking about how like Bilbo even is, he isn't, even when the dwarves do ask him for more as they trust him more, and he will still kind of do his like Baggins kind of thing of like pushing back, but at the same time like he's ready to go. And in the last chapter he does get his mithril coat, which I think we're going to see in the movie in this next segment. And it's something, he has a very different reaction to it in the movie than he does in the book. He felt cool, which probably doesn't happen a lot, in the way that it does with male shirt like that. Whereas movie Bilbo feels kind of ridiculous, which isn't quite right. So it is that is, I think, I probably would let a lot of this other stuff slide if we had more Bilbo, um, personally. But that is kind of the whole chapter. It's really, the chapter itself is really focused on like the death of Smaug and the aftermath and what starts to happen afterwards. And so at about like 19 minutes and 55 seconds of the extended edition is ish where I stopped it, because at the end of that segment is when we start to see, like as we were mentioning, we do have Keely and some of the other dwarves that have stuck around for the majority, or they stayed back because like of the Morgul era, which I don't want to go into anymore. But and I was thinking about that, and I was like, I wonder if I know that pushing the Keely Tariel narrative was probably part of the reason that they stayed behind, like as far as like when they were making decisions in the writing room. But I also wonder if they did it because they wanted some dwarves to physically witness Smog's attack. I don't know, because at the same time we know that the dwarves are also watching it from Erebor, so not sure. But the dwarves at this point, they finally take one of the last boats, and they head back up to Erebor. And so I stopped it right around the time where they're physically walking
Walking up.
to the Lonely Mountain. And as we were saying, like Tariel is about to go off with Legolas, and Bard is stepping up into that leadership role now that we have no master, to lead the people, and he's really focused on their needs first, which also on point for
And I like
Bard.
that that's true to the books and it's in the movies. Like Bard
Mm-hmm.
really does become the leader of his people.
And I
Yeah.
think it's important how he became such a leader. It's because they recognize, like I think in the books, he was like, there were people that came with him because he was the captain of the bowmen, but little by little, they all left, and he's the only one that stayed. And that was such a big deal to the villagers who literally watched the master. I mean, in both scenes, just on his golden bow, just see ya. Like, I think it's a real, like, when he was tested, they were like, yeah, no, not this guy, not this one. He's the
Yeah, it is great that in both versions the people of the town recognize the leadership and the the real qualities that Bard has. I mean, I know that Tolkien kind of mentions that people know that Bard's a good guy, even though they tease him about being kind of a downer. But it is really like in that moment when they thought they lost him, that they're like, wow, like that is showing true leadership. And they in the book, they're upset with the master because he's like, why didn't you fight more when there were people still willing to defend it? But in both, we have Alfred instead of the master or whatever, but in both versions, Bard kind of like smooths things over, gets the people focused on like what really needs to happen, which is taking care of the people of the town and making sure that they don't just they have shelter and supplies and things. One thing that I did notice that was interesting, I just thought of this literally just now, but it is like we know that it's winter is coming in the book, that that it was autumn and winter is fast approaching. In the movie, we had established Lake Town as being icy AF. Like,
I think it's just perma winter there. It's just
yeah, but now there wasn't really ice in this last. Do you know what I'm saying? Did Smaug melt at all? I don't.
Flying over melted everything. Well, everything was on fire, so it was pretty hot.
Yeah,
that's not a crazy thought, actually.
So I just thought that was. I just realized that just now that like. So I mean, I don't think in Peter's version people are going to die of cold, but
because we don't sit long enough.
We don't. Yeah, we'll never know. But it suddenly doesn't look as cold as it did when we first entered Lake Town.
I think the only thing Alfred said was, "I'm gonna catch a cold out here if I don't get this blanket," and like gets in a fight with the woman. That's the only
right.
Two.
That's like their one nod.
Yeah. Give me a blanket.
Oh, he is the worst.
He's disgusting.
Yeah,
just as bad as Wormtongue. I think that was their.
I think Wormtongue may have had. I mean, this guy's got like nasty teeth. Wormtongue didn't. I don't think Wormtongue even had eyebrows. So
no, not the unibrow.
Yeah, this is like our Wish version of Wormtongue.
Yeah. That's so accurate.
So that really brings us to the end of this segment of the movie. I'm sure there's going to be some things that we see here that get sprinkled throughout the rest, but that's really where the chapter ends. And so next time we're going to have the Gathering of the Clouds. Going to check back in with the dwarves. But before we leave, I want to make sure, Haley, that you let people know where to follow you, so they can see your face some more.
Oh, yes, I always love seeing all Tolkien friends. I guess on TikTok and on Instagram, I am Haley_LOTR. No I's or Y's or anything in there, just HALEY. So, but yeah, I love to see everybody there. And thank you, Andy. Thank you, Callie. This is just, you guys are amazing. Like I said, I'm always a big fan of show. So I just love this. I'm
so glad that you're able to join us. Really have, getting to know you via TikTok a little bit, and just, love supporting more women in the space, but also positive voices that, we've found, and a really great sense of community over there. So we're so happy that we've crossed paths, and now that you've been able to join the podcast.
All right. It's always an unexpected journey,
That was good. And of course, quick reminder, you can find Tolkien with Friends on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. Now season 2 does get posted to YouTube whenever I actually edit the episodes. And we are also on Patreon. Just want a quick plug for that, because there are no tiers. We have some bonus episodes. You get to see handwritten notes. We've had invites to lives for Patreon supporters. So if you want to join us for any amount, feel free to find us over there, and that's just patreon.com/TolkienWithFriends. So we hope to see you there. Otherwise, be sure to subscribe. Make sure you get notifications for every time a new episode comes out, and we will see you on the internet.